Hi, welcome to Season 4 of Product Ops Podcast with me, Gerisha Nadaraju. This season, I'm joined by a special co-host and prior Season 1 guest, Dr. Kevin Sakamato. Each week, we'll be chatting to Product Ops practitioners, consultants, and thought leaders about how they make their value visible. Listen in for practical tips on how to drive real organizational impact with Product Ops. Rebekah, welcome to Product Ops Podcast. We are very excited to have you on today. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thanks. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, very excited to have you on. I've actually spoken to you a few times because you're part of this group that I've unofficially joined, where we're sort of a group of product ops leaders who meet unofficially and sort of chat about some of the challenges that we face in product ops. And it's been hugely helpful to me personally and sort of therapeutic. And so I thought it would be lovely, given your experience, to have you on and hear you speak about your work in product ops.
Well, thank you. Likewise, it's been great to be able to learn with you and from you.
Nice. Rebekah, to get us started, it would be great if you could just let us know a bit about your journey into product operations and what you currently do.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So I kind of fell into product ops in a way. I have a digital education and education background in my working life. So previously designing courses and learning materials. And a few years ago, 7 years ago now, coming up to 7 years ago, we bought a tool, Pendo, and it was handed over to me as, can you figure this one out? And with that, we grew it into a role that then moved into product. And this newly formed, at the time, it was a newly formed product operations group. So lots of colleagues coming together, and I was part of that. And then kind of as the years have passed, that role has continued to grow and change. And we have a team now dedicated to different parts of the business. And I run part of that team.
Very cool. So previously, sort of background was in digital learning, you said, and then kind of transitioned into getting closer to sort of like tool management or, looking at data and tooling. And then from there, that particular thing, it ended up expanding into this product operations role.
Yes. Yeah. Especially because of the processes that you can build around the tools. So being very passionate about the efficiency and efficacy of what we're doing, not just having a tool for the sake of having it, or because it looks cool or because someone has decided it's their passion project, but really what can you do with that tool or suite of tools to have an impact on the business? And that's where I've kind of positioned myself.
Given your positioning there, have you seen any sort of resistance to the processes you build around that, or has what you've been building been pretty well received and integrated?
It depends on the group and depends on the team that we're working with. I've worked with lots of different teams that cover different industries, and within that, everyone comes with their own kind of working group culture, and some are more open to kind of a new way of working than others, which is normal, and I totally get it. I would be similar, I'm sure, in certain positions. If someone came to me and was just like, I want to try this thing, I'd be like, who are you? But yeah, there have been challenges, but I think what has really worked out is our impact on the business. And once that's seen and understood, we've won most people over, I would say.
Yeah, and we'll get into that impact in a little bit. And the reason why I ask is because one of the questions that we've been asking all of our guests this season is just the role of product operations and whether or not it's something that it's temporary or that it's here to stay. And so often when organizations face budget cuts or what have you not, they look at product operations as one of the first ones, early ones to let go of. So I'm curious to know from your perspective, do you see product operations as a temporary role or one that should be here to stay?
I think it should be here to stay for sure. I recognize my bias in that statement, but yeah, I think from what I've seen over the last few years, it's grown in popularity and grown in the understanding, even if it is a high level understanding of what product ops could be or should be. So I think it does have staying power. And I think as we grow as a craft and as a field and our value is understood more widely, I think we will see it have that staying power the same way other functions do.
Do you see any challenges with that, Rebekah? Or I guess, do you have any tips for organizations, not tips, but I guess advice for organizations who are thinking of maybe cutting the role as to why you think that it is something that should stay?
Yeah, I've been putting a lot of thought into this, especially recently, due to some other discussions that I've been a part of. And it's hard to quantify sometimes the soft skills that go along with product ops in terms of building those connections and connecting parts of the business that might not otherwise talk to each other, just because it is an operational role that faces so many different teams. So it is difficult to sometimes quantify that and demonstrate it back to the business. So I understand if you're looking at a spreadsheet trying to make cuts and you're like, well, what is this function? What do they do? So my advice, and I've had success with this myself, is even just starting with really small, simple examples that you can add up a cost effectiveness with, to say that we've had impact on this. And it can be something small like tooltips. So like, how much time do you save by centralizing certain processes with your product groups and with your technology groups, and adding that up over the course of a year? It does add up, sometimes very quickly and sometimes exponentially, depending on the industry you're in, the product, location, et cetera. And sometimes it can be that could justify you for quite some time, which is nice. But if you're looking for something more impactful, we found a lot of success attaching ourselves to existing business cases. So if we know that there's a big initiative, what role can we play with our stakeholders to say, we will support you in this business case. Here's what we promise to deliver. And then we're attached to that business case as it goes through development.
Yeah, I think because that's an important thing in like, whether we see it as being temporary or something that's here to stay. And it's also a nice segue into the next part of this discussion, which is the theme for this season is around making value visible. And it's against the backdrop of this. We've seen so many redundancies and where product ops teams have been cut, or where they constantly have to justify their value and sort of prove their worth more so than sort of other functions in an organization or more established ones. And so one thing we've been really curious about and want to sort of shine a light on with our guests is work that people have done in product ops roles that actually has driven impact and had value across the org, such that it's been noticed and people have said, oh, that's great, because those are the types of things we want to know about to kind of see what it is that's doing this. So we'd love to find out from you, Rebekah, what is maybe an example of an initiative that you've done within product ops that has had this sort of value or impact within the organization? And if you could just share a bit of context about what was the reason for this initiative coming about and how did you go about sort of setting it up from a product ops perspective?
So I think when I reflect back on the parts of my work or parts of my team's work that has had a lot of impact, it's specifically around working groups that product operations owns and operates. So bringing these cross-functional groups of colleagues together, centered around all of the bits that can very easily get dropped in the day-to-day running of a business. So originally we started these working groups around Pendo. But very specifically, we had kind of things we wanted to accomplish with the tool of choice. So we were focused on the core use cases that tool delivered and making sure everyone had a seat at the table. Everyone felt bought into the process. We had a RACI that we designed, and everyone agreed. And the deal was you had a seat at the table, but you couldn't just come and complain. You had to participate, and we had to agree to work together. And that proved to be really powerful. And I set that up at the beginning of every time we relaunched or launched one of these initiatives. I said, like, this is the founding principle of we're all here to learn from each other and kind of use everyone's expertise to the best of our ability. But it's not just a venue to come and complain. Like, we are action focused. We're going to do something here. And it was a bit of levity. It sounded a bit like, it does sound a bit harsh, but it was like, okay, we're all like, this isn't just another meeting on our calendar. We're going to do something. And it's different than the go-to-market meeting or a product readout or a monthly business review. It is focused on these nitty-gritty details that everyone does care about, it turns out, because when they're not done, people do want to talk about it and see that change is implemented. So we rolled it out with a core kind of nucleus of colleagues, and they're from the same core functions across all of our different groups. So whether it's technology or UX, customer success, customer care, what have you. And that way we were drawing from truly as much of a cross function of the business that we could. And we got to learn what was important to them and how that impacted what our initial goals of that group were. And it can be anything that fell into this bucket of what do we need to do to push this goal further. So whether it was the North Star metric or the OKRs of the product group, what are we doing as a collective to push that forward? What do we need to do to implement different technologies, different development processes? We brought it together and focused it around that. So it's been really nice to reflect back on a lot of colleagues we found. They may know each other, they may have worked together for decades in some cases, and they never came to work together in this way. So it was nice to see them being like, oh, okay, well, we have this over here in our group and we can share it with you, and then maybe make a few tweaks and it can turn into something really powerful. And that's been very rewarding. And then it's also rewarding when I reflect back on the parts of the business where these groups may have lapsed for various reasons, whether that is attrition or reorganizations. And although it is sad to see certain things not getting done anymore and certain initiatives being stopped and kind of chaos starting to creep in or ensue, it is really nice to see that what I'm seeing now is people coming back to me being like, how do I set this up? Where do I start from the beginning to reestablish a working group to have the organization and the impact of what the group was originally set up for? So even when it is lapsed, it's been rewarding to see everyone be like, oh, wait, we used to do this thing and it was really good. And then we stopped doing it. So why don't we go back to doing that thing that had value for all of us?
I'm curious about the how, if I could go back a little bit with this nucleus of colleagues, and sort of the one rule is don't come to complain. We're here to solve problems. But when you create an environment where there's this psychological safety, that there are people that have known each other for years, and there's already this sort of innate safety, how do you enforce that rule? How do you prevent people from just defaulting to coming to complain?
Yeah, so we normally have someone who is in charge of kind of leading the group, and there is a set standard agenda. So the other piece is that everyone has their own section of the agenda. Whether they want to use it that week or that part of the month or not, they don't have to, but they know they have that dedicated time that is theirs. They can be recognized as part of the agenda. Do you have anything for this week? Yes, no, we can carry on. And the point of someone leading the group is just, and it's a product ops person, is to say, okay, we hear you, we are validating, like we understand what you're saying. What are we going to do about it? And how are we as a group going to react to the complaint and the problem that is brought to us? And sometimes you're right, people do just need an avenue to complain sometimes, and that's fine. It's nice to have that safety in the workplace to be able to do that. But when everyone comes in with that mindset of we're going to we're going to take action, we're going to do something, I like to think, I may not be 100% right on this all the time, but it does imbue this sense of, okay, I can come and I can complain, and I know that we're going to do something afterwards with this. So it's not just we're going to leave it for another however many years and let it fester. It's okay, this group, we're coming together. Here's the issue. What do we do about it? Because it's set from the beginning that we will take action. So you can complain, but also we want to do something about it.
I think this is such an interesting concept, Rebekah, and it is something that's been mentioned before around product ops kind of helping with these cross-functional working groups and organizations. In your case, I don't know if I just heard you right now where you said it doesn't really have somebody leading the group, but there is an agenda. But what is product ops' role in the group? Setting it up, or how do you continue to be involved with it once it's set up? Or what would product ops sort of practically do with them?
Sorry, like we product ops have someone leading it, and we send out the agenda. It's a standard agenda normally. So, but
Yeah.
product ops is the responsible party for keeping it going.
Okay, so product ops is the person who kind of leads and drives this working group. Okay, so then is that sort of product ops role in it then, as you know, as it continues to always be the person leading and kind of moving this group forward in order to get this initiative done?
Yes, and responsible for reporting it. Product ops is responsible for keeping everybody going and on track, and reporting out on the initiatives every week. So there's or every 2 weeks, whatever the cadence is. So there's kind of a recap of what we had agreed, but also product ops has sometimes, it's because of the network and the connections that product operations people tend to have in a business or that they create. They're able to go out and find, in my experience, answers from other parts of the business that may not be in that working group. So oftentimes if no one knows what to do, okay, product ops will go out and figure out what to do about it or who to talk to find an answer that could lead the group forward a little bit more. Some functions will never be included in the, like they sit centrally, that they don't really have anything to do with the day-to-day operations of the product or the operational model, but we still have to talk to them. We still rely on these colleagues, and product ops would go out and be the person to engage with them.
Hmm. And then one of the things I was reflecting on when we were chatting about working groups with somebody else was around kind of how do you incentivize people to actually be part of it? Because I feel like I've sometimes been looped into working groups where they may not be that effective. And so you're hesitant to give up your time to meet if you know, I mean, you clearly say action's going to happen, but it doesn't always happen with working groups. So are these people that have already pulled you into and said they're interested in this problem, or you as product ops has decided that these are the people that need to be involved and you sort of told them?
A little bit of both. So usually it's we start with the core. We have that core nucleus of functions that they already know about us. They know we want to deliver and we want to have this impact. So they become more likely for their colleagues and their immediate teams to encourage them to join, which is really nice. And then we also ask kind of the product teams or kind of the other people in the nucleus to say, like, who else do we think should be in this group? And it may be a consultant who speaks to customers on a day-to-day basis, and their expertise is super valuable. So we want them to be able to join us, and we can all work together. And we found as these groups developed that not everyone will attend every single meeting, but they will always come back to the meetings. So even if they know that there's an initiative going on that they're like, yeah, not really interested in that, that doesn't really impact me, they will come back and stay informed about what's going on. So it still serves a purpose, even if not everyone attends every meeting.
I was just going to ask in terms of attendance, is it, I don't want to say self-serving or selfish, like where they just come just because they want to have their thing solved, or do you find that attendees are genuinely interested in just the overall effectiveness of the organization and seeing how things play out?
I think it's probably a bit of both.
Mhm.
Because I think as a group, we tend to work on some really cool projects that sometimes are like the really like annoying things that may exist on a product. And you're like, there's been a few examples over the years where like people have complained about one tiny, tiny aspect of the product. And in these working groups, we're like, oh, well, so-and-so should know the answer. And then we found out, we fixed it, and then it fixed this longstanding problem that no one, it had just been left there to fester. So I think it does, like, people will come with their examples of what they want solved. And I think that can be a huge win for the group as well, because you can say, oh, we had this impact on this group, that they had a problem, we were able to help fix it because we are so well connected with the rest of the business. But as these things grow, we have found as we've rolled out our initiatives, people want to stay informed about them because there's a direct impact not only on the product, but on the customers as well and on our end users. So if we're rolling something out that the end users are going to see, people are so invested in, like, I need to see what the end users are seeing. They're like, okay, great, then come along. So we've tried to make it so it's not too big. We found when the invite list gets to be between like above 15, it gets a bit unwieldy, and then people get afraid. They become afraid to talk in groups of a certain size. So especially when we're really getting like at the initial phase of getting going with a new group, we keep it quite small actually, so that we can move quickly, be effective, and we can create that trust as a group. Especially sometimes they're new to us, we're new to them, so we want to create that culture of we are here to help and we are here to be a true partner to our colleagues. And it's worked so far, but yeah, we adapt as things go.
Got it. And that trust aspect, I imagine, is very critical to this, and making sure, as you mentioned, everyone has a seat at the table earlier. How do you go about prioritizing what gets done? Because a skeptic might come to this group and say that, oh, well, only the loudest voices will get something done. But you mentioned earlier that there's just even some of the small things that just sit and fester that get resolved as well. So how do you go about prioritizing what gets done from this group?
That's a good question. So, sorry, all of your questions have been good. But that one, yeah. The first thing I always recommend my team to do is, okay, if we don't know what our next priority should be, follow the data. So what's going to impact the most number of users? What's going to impact kind of the newest things in technology that we're investing a lot of money into develop and roadmap out? And then finally, what is going to have the largest impact on sales and retention? So it's really prioritizing against our own spend, but in a really kind of friendly way of doing it. Like, I would never say to a team like, oh, well, you don't make it, like, that's not worth our time and investment. But it's also, we want to help everybody. Obviously, that's our ethos of like, we're here to be as positive and helpful as we can. But ultimately, like, there's a laundry list of things to do. So what will impact the most customers and what will impact the revenue?
I'm curious, as you're talking, Rebekah, how does this roll up into, I guess, your product operations? I don't know if it's mandate or vision or pillars or whatever you want to slice it. Your focus areas for product ops, potentially for your team. The sort of working group, is it something where this is one of the things that product ops does, or is it the vehicle or mechanism that you use to get other initiatives that maybe fall under product ops done?
I think it's a bit of both. So
Yeah.
one of the things, like when we are engaging with a new product group for the first time, I do kind of warn them that they're embarking on this multi-year journey with us and that we're here to support. There's lots of things that we're going to do together over the next few years, and regular meetings with us are part of it. I wouldn't say it ends up being like maybe a supporting role in the pillars, because it really helps kind of further those pillars along. But it's one of the founding bricks, I would say, in that. And the groups that have had the working groups do show the most progress, in my experience, with supporting the product ops vision as well, because we're able to demonstrate this is how we've connected it back to our own OKRs.
Well, that's really, because my other question to you was going to be like, well, how do you measure the impact of these groups? Is it direct feedback from people? Is it signals? Is it actual metrics? What makes these groups successful so that you can say, as a product ops team, we've delivered value?
At a basic level, I have a maturity matrix, and it started out as a Pendo maturity matrix to make sure we were getting the value out of the tools we were buying. And over time, we've grown it to be less about the tool and focused more on the initiative and who's responsible for those initiatives. And everyone has a goal. And actually, we've seen it as some of our other colleagues, not in product ops, have reaching different stages of maturity on this matrix as their own goals, because they see the value in kind of how we've structured it as well, which has been really reaffirming. So there's that to say, okay, we've reached this level of maturity. And it's understood that when a group reaches that level of maturity, they have all of these other things in place. So they will have kind of a feedback mechanism in place. They will have onboarding done even at a basic level, and then we'll grow to expand that. They have regular UX initiatives being run with the collective group, and the support of that. They have different kinds of analytics, and we're very specific about what kinds of analytics we want to run. So understanding our end users and understanding and predicting the success of our releases and our product. So showing the product adoption is key. So we have a list that it grows and adapts based on how long these groups have worked with us, and we reset it every year. So just we don't want anyone to rest on their laurels. So we basically in January, I clear the whole thing and we start from scratch. So if users or not start from scratch, but like if our groups have everything in place, they very quickly just like knock things off. But it also gives us a chance to reflect on the existing structure and the programs and processes we have in place to say, does this still work? Do we need to adapt this? Did something change in the product last year that actually what we thought was going on isn't actually going on, and we need to roll that out? So it does kind of help keep us in check as well, which has been really nice to have.
Is that annual sort of refresh associated or tied back to the corporate strategy, the objectives that the organization has per year?
Yes, yeah, it definitely can change. And everything is kept agnostic enough that it can be adapted to the change in strategy. So, for example, migrating off of a legacy product into the next generation version, we still want to understand adoption. We want to understand the technology spend on it versus how many users are using it, the UX initiatives that went into migrating users over, making sure onboarding is done for kind of anything from a video to a tooltip. We want to make sure that that's included. So everything falls under the same categories, but then those categories can encompass more depending on what the goals of the product are that year.
Got it. And how do you then keep everybody informed of these changes? Those members that you no longer work with, and you've refreshed it for 2025. How do you let them know? And do you say, hey, you should come back and do your next like product ops working group checkup or something like that?
Yeah, we just kind of keep it going. So because sometimes like as products grow and change, we will change the cadence of it. So like maybe when we first launch a product, they need a working group every week or every other week. And then as they grow in maturity, they may meet once a month. And then at the start of the year, we do set the scene of, okay, we're starting from scratch. Here, this is where we're at. So if there are changes, come back. But then also because we're so embedded and we have these relationships with our colleagues, we generally know what's coming, what business cases have been approved, and what the next level is. So the benefits of the working groups, and this is one thing I'm really quite proud of as an organization and for my team, is that it goes beyond just the working groups. It is really embedding within the culture of the organization. So they're seen as valued partners, so that our partners do want to come back and tell us like, oh, we've got this thing coming up. We will need to re-engage with you or engage in a different way. So it's the knock-on if the working groups obviously have value and they have a lot of impact, but it's also this wider organizational shift where we are seen as a partner and that people do want to engage with us. That it's very rewarding looking back and being like, oh, that was something we struggled with this group or in this time frame, and that's not a problem anymore.
I think that's a very strong signal, and that feedback or just having people, you've now got a pull, right, where people are coming to you and your team and saying, hey, can you help us, solve this problem, or can we set something up to do that? That's a huge indicator that you're driving value. Because also in these types of things, product ops can often be, it's not even product ops. I've seen this with people in sort of maybe project management or program management. You can become the stick chaser, cat herder type person in a working group, and the participants don't really want to give off their time. And then how do you shift that to show that product ops is a value partner in this, not just the person who is telling you and chasing you on things that you need to do?
Yes, I mean, sometimes it's hard. Like someone today was just like, you make it sound so easy when I was talking about we were launching a new initiative. And it obviously it is not always that easy. It is having to get that buy-in and having the wide connection. I think one of the strengths of product ops as well is because it's usually across an organization. You get visibility into all of these different examples, big or small, whether it's something like a cool thing UX did in one product that you can or one group that you can share with another. I have found in my experience, it's finding the hook that will get people invested in it and make them want to come back. So it won't always be they want to follow every step of our maturity matrix, and that's fine. I get it. Like people are busy, we have to prioritize, but also like once we get that hook, it then opens up the door to be like, oh, this other thing that we can do now that we've done this, we can keep building on it and go back and maybe do something that we missed in like in an earlier stage. We can come back and revisit it now that you see that the rest of the program is really nice.
And is that, because that's kind of, I wouldn't say a soft skill, but that's almost like something that maybe you quite well, Rebekah, that you've got to do, but it sounds like you've got a team or you've got product ops people on the ground that are running these things. Do you try and sort of get them to understand that very quickly, of like being able to get that buy-in with stakeholders? Or I don't know, is it something that you hire for, or they've got to learn?
I do try and hire for it. For a lot of things, they can be taught. I mean, I didn't start off in an analytics role. I didn't start off in a products role. I've learned as I go. So I'm all for giving people the opportunity when I can, obviously, to step into a different role. But it's that curiosity and that drive to keep learning and talking to people that I find harder to teach. So when I am hiring, I try very intentionally to say, on the ground as an organization, we can teach you a lot of this, but if you're not curious and wanting to learn and go out and kind of see what other people are doing, or kind of follow your gut and dig into things a bit more. That is harder to teach. You're absolutely right.
You mentioned earlier about following the data. And is there an example that you could share of when someone actually had to chase the data, right? And use these skills of just being curious and go after finding the data because it wasn't readily obvious?
So we had a product where they were building a new export feature, and everyone was just like, "Oh, this is something that we've always just done. Why we will do the export in this way, and this is what people want." And it's like, well, that's not necessarily true, because the part of the product we were working on is brand new. It serves a kind of a different use case and a slightly different persona than what we would normally be working on. So actually it was really nice because the product manager was just like, I have this idea. I think I do want to go after it. So they put in a survey in the product. It was a fake door that made it look like the export button was already there. And because it was hard to see kind of what forms of export were being used elsewhere in the product, like whether it was Excel or PDF or what have you. So we built this thing to say like, okay, let's just ask our users and see what they say. And then the data that came from that was actually what informed the kind of export that we made available. And it did change the roadmap of, okay, well, they want a PDF, whether it was a PDF or an Excel, I don't remember, but it did change the outcome of that, because someone actually stopped and was just like, oh, that's a curious thing that should we do it just because that's the way we've always done it? They went and asked our users and followed the data from that to release, and it was very successful in the end. So what we also do is with that, we would follow up and make sure people are actually adopting it the way we want them to adopt it, the way we designed it. So we're not just asking people in advance for their opinion. We want to make sure that the investment and the ask was actually worthwhile, and that we've done something positive with their feedback, that it mattered.
Mm-hmm. Right. So there's that curiosity aspect of coming up with a fake door and getting some data, but then the operational side is following through and making sure that it's still being used. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Rebekah, I'm curious, and you may have touched on some of these already, but were there any kind of challenges that you faced in setting these types of working groups up, or lessons that you learned along the way that might be good advice to people who are trying this for the first time, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of reflecting back now that we've had them for a number of years, I think it's okay for people to not get it at first. They will come around. It will be okay. They will see the value as long as we continue to deliver as product ops, and deliver on what we've promised to do. People do come around, and I've said this to my own team. It's okay if people are quiet at first, because sometimes they haven't worked, like they may have known each other for years, but they've never worked together. So it is about creating that cross-functional space where we are establishing that trust. I would also say that it's okay for some groups to not be involved. There might always be that kind of part of the business that doesn't want to engage. They're fine on their own. And my ethos is everyone's invited. Obviously, everyone has a seat at the table, like I said, but also I'm not going to beg anyone to come to the group. It's disheartening after a certain point to continue to ask people to show up, and if they don't, it's okay to move on without them, to obviously not do their job for them, but continue on with what you are delivering as product operations and what your role is to carry on if not everyone is on board. Eventually, hopefully they will come along, but you can only invite people for so long. So I would say respect people's boundaries, and when they say no and they mean it, that's okay too. Yeah, because if once you start delivering on things and the actions and impact do speak for the work, then people generally do come around.
And you want to make sure that when people do come around, that they feel welcomed, right? That they don't feel,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Got it.
We'll always pull up another chair. That's no problem.
Yeah. That's awesome. What I'm getting from this is the commitment that you have to have for this. It is not enough to simply just bring people together. There has to be an intention. There has to be a trusted process. There has to be the safe space for people to come together, and sort of standards of behavior and operation. And then on your part as well, from a product operations perspective, to keep that discipline going, to bring people together, to chase after, to be curious, to send out communication, and to every year refresh things all over again. It's a lot of work. It seems like a heavy burden. So how do you, well, two-part question. The first part is, what is the hardest thing about being in product operations? And then how do you stay motivated to just do what you do?
Some heavy questions in there. I think the hardest part of product operations is, and it was the point of your season, I think, the the justification of product ops and showing impact in that measuring, especially as new leaders come in, they might see things differently, and trying to find that hook of what matters to leaders at a certain time is tough. It's great when you can get to a point, obviously, where you don't feel like you have to justify yourself and your team all the time. But also, it's always, I think it's in the back of everyone's mind, especially in the economy and the environment we're in, that, this is a reality sometimes. So I think always having to kind of have that extra bit to prove that product ops has impact and is valuable is the hardest part, especially when you have a team. Obviously, I think this is true of anyone when it's not just you. It's a team that you're justifying. I find the motivation to keep going when especially like on long and hard weeks, when I'm just like, gosh, this one was a tough one, is actually looking back at where we were a year ago, or looking back where we were 2 years ago, and thinking, okay, what was my top of mind as a worry at that point? And is that still a worry now, or have we solved it? And that's been really rewarding, because things move so fast sometimes that we never, aside from the retro, there's not like a reflection to be like, oh, okay, this was a really cool thing that we did. And this is something that we've solved. No one's talking about it anymore. No one's worrying about it. It's no longer an organizational challenge. Or we continue to have such impact that, when we were starting off with one initiative, and it was like, oh, is anyone actually going to want to do this? And now everyone's banging down our door because they want it for their product. The difference a year can make, it does keep me going and I hope it will keep others going as well, to say what we do matters, and it does have an impact. It's just sometimes it is hard to quantify, but year over year, the organizational and process changes we can put in place as product ops can be really profound.
Yeah, I really like that, Rebekah. And it reminded me of something you said, and I took down earlier in the chat, which was around when you sometimes meet a new product leader, you talk to them about going on this multi-year journey with them. So you're almost already setting up the expectation and explaining to them that it's not like an overnight fix. This is like a multi-year journey. And I do think sometimes the impact that you see with the work that we do is something that really comes through over multiple quarters. It's hard at the beginning, though, or with a new leader. I love that you brought up that point, though, actually. You could be very well supported, and then suddenly a new leader comes in and you've got to justify your existence again. But yeah, explaining that it can take a while to see that value, especially in a function where you need to potentially justify your existence. That's good. And it's really good that you pause and reflect like that. I think not just for work, but life. I think sometimes we get so stressed out, and you've had a really bad week, and then you're like, oh no, and everything seems bad. And then you don't realize how much you've grown, or what you've done, or where you were maybe a year ago. And actually, it's amazing that you've even gotten to this point. So that is a huge one. I think I'll take it away also, because we're always thinking about the next thing, right? We've got so many fires or problems to solve. It's like, okay, this, and this, and we rarely go back. So that's a great point. Rebekah, I have one more question for you, which is, you kind of explained at the beginning your journey of the way that you ended up in product operations, but I know that you have been in this role for a few years now. And so I'd be so curious to find out whether your definition or how you thought about product ops when you first started in it, is it still the same, or has it changed now over the years?
It's definitely changed. I think as well, because product ops as a definition that is accepted, that's recognized by other people, has changed. So when we first came together, I remember collaborating with my leader at the time on these slides of well, what is product ops? Because looking at our team, we were super knowledgeable people that had been in the business for years, and it was almost like they had nowhere else. Where do we put these people? They're doing something really important, but they don't really fit in the other teams. So product ops was like, okay, we're going to bring everyone together. And I think over the last few years, that's still true to a certain extent. There's roles that have to be done that aren't strictly technology. They may not be strictly product. They may not be strictly customer care, but product ops as a function is much more structured, because through the need to justify ourselves has evolved for, we have to speak everyone else's language as well. So what is product ops vision? Where are we going? What are the pillars of product ops in a similar way to how the craft of other functions operate? So I would definitely, my definition and understanding of product ops has definitely changed, and it's something I'm looking back maybe 5 years from now, I reckon it will definitely change again. I don't know what it will look like. I don't know what it'll be, but yeah, I think it has changed in the last few years, and it's become much more succinct as a discipline.
Well, I'm very curious. Are you able to share what your vision or your definition of product ops is at the moment?
I guess my vision when I rolled it out at the start of the year was no data without a process. So we're not just going to measure things for the sake of measuring things. We're not going to just produce reports because people want to report this month and then they'll never look at it again. We're not just going to do something that someone wanted us to do because they're like, oh, that seems like something product ops should do. I'm sure we all get this, where new people will join the business and be like, oh, well, product ops is, and then list off a few things and that's great. And I think that's a really helpful starting point, especially, but it changes depending on where you are in the business. And it depends on what business you're in and how old the business is, and product ops can look different for everyone. So my thing was, okay, we're not just going to do things for the sake of doing them. There has to be a process, and we have to connect it back to something where we can show impact. Because I was just like, okay, it's great that product ops can be everything, but we don't have resources to be everything to everybody. So let's make sure that whatever we do or need to adjust or pivot or what have you this year, we want to make sure that it does have an impact. And we do that through processes, and whether that will change next year or in 2 years, I'm open to it, but that's just where we're at.
Yeah, Rebekah, that's really interesting. And I think it also talks to, in a way, being able to show what is one of the key things your team is able to do for people, which is data, and I know there's other pillars, but that's one of the focus areas. But also, it can't just be a free-for-all on data, right? Just because data is maybe one of your focus areas or pillars within the team, it needs to be almost like intentional data. That's what it seems to be that you're saying, is that you want to do this, but in a way that is ultimately going to add value to the business and be impactful. And also, you have to have boundaries in place, because you've only got a certain number of resources. So how do you prioritize and make sure you do that? So I think that's a really good thing to sort of put almost some guardrails in as to how people interact and work with your team. I know it's one of the things I'm thinking about now also with my product ops team. We have our focus areas. I've got a team. We're sort of doing things. But now, as the scope increases and you get more stakeholders who want you to focus on things, it's also thinking, well, how should we be interacting with those stakeholders, and how should they be interacting with us, and what makes the most sense? So that's really interesting to find out. We've loved chatting to you, Rebekah. So this has been really great. Thank you so much for talking to us and going through the example with us. It was great.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
One of the things I did want to find out is, how can listeners get in touch with you after the episode in case they wanted to have a chat or anything resonated in terms of what you said?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just Rebekah Carere on LinkedIn is perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thank you again, Rebekah. We had a lovely time, and I'm sure we'll chat about other things throughout the year when we catch up.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please remember to rate, follow, and subscribe to Product Ops Podcast across our channels, including Substack. Even better, share it with your friends and colleagues in Product Ops, as that helps others find it. Thanks, and take care.